Hello and welcome to the Doof Book Club, our monthly live stream discussion of a book chosen by you, our listeners. My name is Matt Freeman, and I'm joined as always by my no good spore eating shipmate, Scott Daly.
You didn't say dirty. I wrote dirty in there.
Dirty spore eater is what you are.
Yeah, love them spores. They're delicious. Hello, everybody. I didn't think this intro through. Welcome. We hope you're all having a wonderful Friday evening. I sure know I am. I was watching my team play basketball right before this episode started, and we're winning. So I'm pretty jazzed about that. But I'm ready here to talk about some books. So I'm sure we know a lot of people in the chat. I already see some names I recognize. But if you happen to be here on the book club for the very first time, my camera's also weirdly positioning me. So hold on, I feel like I need to be centered more. Cool. If you're here for the very first time, hello. We are Doof Media, and we make podcasts all about the stories we love. We also arrange this book club, and Matt will now explain to you fine people what a book club is.
Well, Scott and I select 5 books from a pool of books submitted to us by our wonderful Doof community. We put up a poll for all the supporters on Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia, and we'll let them vote on which book they'd like us to talk about. The book with the most votes wins, and then we all read it.
And then we meet here on the last Friday of the month and spend an hour or so chatting all about the book, talking about what we liked, what we didn't, what we think the book is doing, and how it does it. Before we get into this month's book, we do have a little bit of homework to do. As we said, we let people vote on the book, but we also let our live attendees vote on next month's book, as well as our patrons over on our Patreon. So if you are here right now in the chat, you get to vote possibly twice if you're also a patron. So I am sending a link to the straw poll right now, which will have our 5 books available for next month. It's not very close right now. There's one book that's kind of running away with it, and that could change, though. There's enough people here. Brandon Sanderson always brings a pretty big crowd, so there's enough people here in the chat that you could influence the poll. You do get to vote for 2 books in this poll, so look at those 5 books, pick the 2 you would like us to do a book club on, and we'll add that to the patron poll, and at the end of the show, we will figure out what we're doing next month. But Matt, what are we doing this month?
This month we are doing TRESS in the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. That's right. Brandon is out of probation, out of jail again.
And he's about to go right back in. Just kidding. Matt, what's this book about?
I'll tell you, Scott. The only life TRESS has known on her island home in an emerald green ocean has been a simple one, with the simple pleasures of collecting cups brought by sailors from faraway lands and listening to stories told by her friend Charlie. But when his father takes him on a voyage to find a bride and disaster strikes, TRESS must stow away on a ship and seek the sorceress of the deadly midnight sea. Amid the spore oceans where pirates abound, can TRESS leave her simple life behind and make her own place sailing a sea where a single drop of water can mean instant death?
It's a pretty good little summary there. Well done, whoever wrote that.
Yeah.
All right, so this is the part of the show where you folks at home tell us what you think of this book. And while you're doing that, Matt is also going to tell me what he thought of this book. So, I mean, we forgot to say hello to people, Matt. We always do this. We get into it and we forgot to actually say hello to the names we have in chat here. So as everyone is telling us what you thought of this book, hello. I see John, I see Bailey, I see Bent Westward, who says first Sanderson book. I see Basil, Bishop, a lot of familiar names here.
Yeah, we got some quite a few unfamiliar names too. Okay,
definitely.
Adam Lemony, the Bonage Hobo.
I just see
awesome.
B.
I see B. Hello, B.
It's the letter B.
Yeah, just letter B.
Matt, what did you think of TRESS of the Emerald Sea?
This was quite an enjoyable little story. This might actually be my favorite Sanderson work, even including the Stormlight books, to be honest, because it's short and sweet and simple, and I think it plays to a lot of his strengths. I think, like one thing people had said when they were kind of trying to pitch this book to us was that it's written in a different style than his other books, and I think it mostly was. It was interesting. I think this was a point you made to me when we were talking earlier, Scott. I think it does kind of fall into his normal style at some points, but very often it takes on a whimsical tone that really felt like he was stretching himself, and I enjoyed that stuff the most overall.
Hmm.
Um, there's also a lot of just fun passages and fun writing that I enjoyed. There was definitely stuff about the book that annoyed me, as always happens with Sanderson, and I think we'll talk
Uh-huh.
about that a little bit. But like,
Yeah,
I don't.
definitely.
This isn't a book where I feel like I have a strong need to like rag on the things that annoy me. It was just like, that's not my thing. That's not my cup of tea. If it were me, I wouldn't have done it that way, you know. But on the whole, I think the whole experience was very positive, and I think as a book, it has a nice ending. It's good, leaves with a good feeling. It's just a nice little book. I enjoyed it quite a bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I mostly agree with that. I think there was a time, maybe, the first third of this book where I said to you, this is without a doubt my favorite thing I've read by Brandon Sanderson. And I will say there was some parts in the middle of the book that it kind of started to lose me a little bit. But Brandon Sanderson is very good at endings. He's very good at bringing things to a satisfying conclusion, and the book got me in the end. And I agree with you. It is definitely him trying a different tone. With it, in my opinion, mixed success. I think there's times when he's really nailing this tone, very much Douglas Adams, William Golding, Terry Pratchett type of tone he's going for here. And I think there's times when he absolutely nails it, and times where, as you said, he kind of slips back and falls into what feels to me just like a very typical Brandon Sanderson way of telling a story. But yeah, it's 300 pages. It's quick. It's delightful. It's fun. I think there's the little things that you're talking about that tend to annoy you when you're reading an 1,000-page book tend to build up much more than when you're reading a pretty quick, fun 300-page story. And yeah, I really liked it. I really did. I don't know if I'm there with you in the end on this is my favorite thing he's ever written. I still really enjoyed the original Mistborn, and I still really like the two Stormlight books we've read. I've had my quibbles, of course, as I always do, but this is a really good book, I thought.
I mean, I feel like my biggest quibble with the Stormlight books is that they take so freaking long to get to the point where you like feel that satisfaction. And so like one of the main things this has going for it is how short it is. I almost like this is going to be, I don't want this to sound super negative because actually I mean it in a positive way, but I'm like, I actually wish this book were like shorter.
I kind of agree with you on that.
But
Yeah.
but like not in a way of like, I wish there were less of it. Like what I mean is like the middle part kind of becomes a standard Cosmere novel to the extent that I know what that means. I have read quite a few Sanderson books at this point. So it's like, the spores are the magic system, and the protagonist is our improbably talented practitioner of the magic system, and we get really into the implications of the magic system. And like, I'm just at a place in my life where I don't really care about that at all anymore. And I wish that hadn't been in the book, and instead we had just had the human drama of it purely. Like that would that would have been great. As it was fine. It didn't ruin the book for me. I was honestly just like, I don't think we need this. I don't think this book needs this element. Like it's great without this. Actually, that was my reaction.
I will say I'm very thankful the book threw us a bone of when she gets to the sorceress's lair and says like, I've made you a gun, and the sorceress is like, those exist all over this planet. People in other places have come up with this years ago. I was like, oh, thank God for at least throwing lip service to the idea that she didn't just in 2 weeks invent something that's never existed on the face of the planet before. I appreciated that. Yeah, I mean, look. And like Sanderson is well known for his magic systems and the way he folds his magic systems into his plot and the way he really gets down in the details of these magic systems. And like, that's his thing. And that's the thing of the people that really like his stuff. And I would never say, don't do that. but also I'm kind of with you on this stuff where I just didn't think this book needed the like I thought the setup of this thing was so cool. I thought the idea of these spore oceans was such a fun idea. It's like, and if water touches it, it turns into a giant fucking vine. That's awesome. And then you learn, oh, there's like 12 of them, and they all do different things, and we've only actually seen a few of them actually. And just like the implications of that and the fun of it, and learning kind of the details of how the ship has to navigate these things is really interesting. And then yeah, like midway through, we get like we start tinkering with the spores, and and I'm just like, ugh, in this book, in this type of book, in this whimsical, like fun, like random things are happening. The villain at the end has a laptop. I just didn't know if we needed to get like, it felt like he couldn't help himself at times.
Mm-hmm.
And like, look, I say that knowing that the people that really, really love Brandon Sanderson probably ate all that shit up, probably loved the shit out of it, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine,
Yeah.
and I'm happy for them. But yeah, it's like me, I'm like, oh, I wish we had not gotten into the details of that, as you said, and just focused more on the whimsical character nonsense of this whole thing.
Yeah. Like, because I really, as always, I think Sanderson is really good at character. Like that's one of the reasons why people love Sanderson, right?
Mm-hmm.
People wouldn't love Sanderson if it were just like, oh yeah, the magic systems. It's like, no, he attaches this into compelling characters. And I something he said on a podcast that I listened to at one point has always stuck with me, where it's like he says that he writes his stories backwards, and what that means is he figures out how they're going to end emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
like where every character is going to be emotionally, arc wise. What is the cool crescendo that I'm building to, and then he works backward from that. And first of all, I think that's just a really clever way to sort of reliably build a solid story structure. Because one thing I will say is, out of all the Sanderson books we've read, I've never been like, man, that ending just what happened there. It's like, no, his endings are always solid, and they have that beautiful element of like, I heard somebody describe it recently as like surprising but inevitable at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I felt very much that. Like, I really liked the ending of this book. I felt stupid for not getting that the rat was Charlie.
I didn't.
But
I didn't get it at
right,
all.
like at the same time, you're like, well, that's the definition of surprising but inevitable, where it's
Yeah.
like, that makes so much sense. And then you're like, well, like, if you had even just thought for a moment, like, what is the significance of the rat exactly? Like, it might have occurred to you, but you're just kind of along for the journey.
It's just a familiar. Just a familiar.
Yeah, it's a familiar.
It's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I like, it's very smart. Like, I like that. Like, I actually got me when we realized that the rat is Charlie, and that Charlie has actually been with him this whole time. And you think
Mhm.
back and you're like, oh, like sometimes he would like ramble, and Charlie would ramble, and he
Yeah.
clearly loves her, and all these little things that happen to make sense now in retrospect. Like, that's very satisfying. It's very clever. Um,
It is so good in retrospect too, because like her motivating factor throughout this whole thing is Charlie,
mhm,
and we barely see Charlie, and like we know that she loves him, but only really because she tells us that she does, and like the
mhm.
book makes it very clear that she loves him. We don't know too much about him. I'm like, I'm with you on this fun fairy tale of trying to get this guy back, but like it would have felt like a weirdly unsatisfying ending if she just gets there, gets him, and the sorceress just gives him Charlie, and she's like, "Yay, I love you! Yay, let's go home and be happy together." This makes it like, "Oh no, you were together the whole time," and I love I forget what the exact line is, but the idea of like, yes, they both changed over the course of their journey, but they changed together.
Yeah.
They in parallel of each other, and that makes you actually invested in the love story.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought it was a really interesting moment when she thinks she has rescued him, and he comes out and he's like, "Hi, it's me, Charlie, the lovable goofus." And you're like, and both you and Tress are like, "Oh, she's like, is this even gonna work anymore?"
Yeah.
Because like, she's grown into this like much more grown up, worldly, interesting person, and then
Yeah.
you realize like, we're doing a thing. It's very clever. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and this, I mean, I think Tress is obviously like the protagonist, the lead character, and the reason this book works as well as it does is because she is truly delightful and fun, um, and like she's, you know, in over her head, and also like many like like many Brandon Sanderson protagonists, she's a sheltered woman who gets thrown into a situation that's in over her head and finds her way through it using her wit and guile and inner strength. Like this is a thing he does, and he's very good at it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing that he's done this particular thing many times. It's not, because he's very, very good at it. And Tress is another great example of those type of characters. I don't even remember the name of the woman in Stormlight Archive that I have such a problem with, but Tress is like 100 times better than her in every way in my mind.
Yeah, are you talking about Shallan or Shallan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can't even
Yeah.
thank you. Now that I heard her name, I remember her, and
But-
all
but-
the memories come flooding back. Yeah.
Once again, I think the shortness of the book is in its favor, because I honestly believe that like our problem with Shallan was that it took like two long books to get to the point where you're like, oh, like this is a deep, complicated character, and I've just been kind of like misunderstanding.
Yeah.
I wish I'd known this earlier. Whereas with Tress, it's like, you fall in love with Tress pretty immediately. She's just a really lovable character. She's really great. I love the thing that Lemony is pointing out in the chat, where it's like the thing that distinguishes her is not necessarily bravery, although she is brave. It's like common sense, where she's like, hold on, before I do that, let me think this through. which I think actually makes stories like this more fun, because it's more fun to feel like you're riding on the shoulder of somebody who is at least as smart as you, instead of just like, that was foolhardy, like that was a stupid choice, but whatever. Whatever.
It is fun sometimes to see characters make the exact wrong choice, and you're like, oh, I mean, that is certainly fun. But yeah, that is, she's it's riding this really fine line, because she does like pick up the spore stuff like incredibly fast. She gets in situation after situation and manages to get her way out of it each time. Like, and I love how the book is almost in conversation about this fact, because all the characters on the ship are like convinced she's some special like government assassin, because she's like a king's mask, I think is the term, right? And they're just absolutely convinced that she's this thing, because no one could be this like good, and really honestly and earnestly, it's just her kind of winging it, and she wins the entire time. I think the culmination of this moment is with the dragon, which, you know, could have been a scene that annoyed me, but was actually just a scene that I just unabashedly loved. Like the way she maneuvers, and the way like how she handles that, and how it plays into her strengths as a character and Crow's weakness as a character. I think it just sells her, and sells what Sanderson is doing with her, and to the point where it is a little bit silly, it is a little bit absurd, but it fits the tone of this book. This is an absurd book. This is a book where the protagonist is Wit, who is in the form of this crazy cabin boy that is speaking nonsense halfway through, and so like someone being like hyper competent, and just bumbling their way through things successfully, failing upwards, like just fits the tone of that kind of story. It just fits it perfectly.
Yeah, right. And also I think part of it is just he does really put in the work to make us fall in love with her, and make us on her side, and make us kind of see her good qualities, because like the great thing about her is she's just a wonderful person, which doesn't occur that often in fiction, actually, right? Because like normally in fiction, in order for it to be good fiction, we create flawed characters who suck in some way or another, and that's part of the fun for us, is we watch them, suffer, or eventually transcend their flaws, is the ideal case in many kinds of narrative. But and I mean, it's not that she doesn't have a flaw, but like she's just this wonderful person, and you just so want her to succeed, and she begins the book, or rather once she leaves her island, everything is like she's really the underdog. There's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of, scrabbling for survival and having to live by her wits, and leverage her existing skill set to survive. And like you really get on her side. And the thing is, like, what she carries through all of that is this sense of justice and right and wrong, and just like having a good heart, such that even when she's in that tunnel with the dragon, like you mentioned, it's not like she doesn't lie. She just,
Yeah.
like she ironically, actually puts Crow in the best possible position for Crow, even though Crow doesn't realize that. By like, she wouldn't have survived if the dragon had only cured her the one time. Although
But I do like the the open-endedness of that, where it could have just been BS. Like, that's
uh
fun. That's fun. I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of just fun in this book, and
yeah,
that's another, like. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room, Matt.
uh-huh,
Let's talk about Wit.
yeah,
I don't like Wit as a character. I've never enjoyed Wit in any of the books Wit has been in, and I heard Wit was in this book. I think right after it won the vote, like someone in Discord said like, "Oh, and we get to see Wit again," and I was like, "Oh no."
uh-huh,
And then I'm reading this book and I find out Wit is the narrator, and
uh-huh.
I'm like, "Oh no." I'm gonna hate this book. And I think it's a testament to the writing that I don't. I still,
uh
so there's obviously like a lot of Cosmere shit going on in the background of this book to where I don't get any of it. I mean, like, there's a shout out to a Mistborn character. I recognized him, um, and there's probably like 7,000 other references that just went completely over my head. They're not key to the story, right? There's never a moment in the story where you feel like, I better have read every single Cosmere book up until this point, or I'm not going to understand what this is saying. The plot and the characters function independent of that. And that's mostly because Tress and Charlie have no idea, even though they know Wit slash Hoyd slash whatever his other name was that's mentioned by the sorceress, like, is some great, important, powerful character in the Cosmere, blah, blah, blah. They don't know that, and they never know that. They just, oh, powerful guy, do powerful thing, help me. And that's all that matters to them. And so I think it ends up working to me. I think there are moments here, like, I think one of the complaints I've thrown at Sanderson is when he's trying really hard to be witty, it sometimes just comes off as annoying. I didn't feel that as much with this book. I think there were like a couple moments where it's like, you're really trying hard to be funny in this moment, and I just don't find that this funny. But there's also like dozens of moments in this book where I was laughing at,
Yeah,
like, out loud sometimes at, like, oh, this is just actually really funny. Um,
yeah. I
and so I
agree.
think best version of Wit I've seen in the Cosmere so far.
Yeah, I think the overall tone of whimsy worked a lot better with Wit, whereas like Wit sort of doesn't fit into the Stormlight story because he's just this like wacky comic relief character in this story that's actually very serious.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't believe that the characters would be behaving this way. Whereas in this story, it's a little bit like the Princess Bride, where you just kind of buy that the characters are going to behave. The characters are going to be cracking jokes because that's the kind of movie that is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's just the kind of books, the kind of book this is, and you buy it, and yeah, basically it's funny, like there are like 30% of Wit's little witticisms that I might have just kind of trimmed out if I had my editing pen, just because
Uh,
I'm like, this isn't. It's not even that this is horrible or that it's like painful to me. It's just like, yeah, it's yeah, and it's like just keep the really good ones,
yeah.
and then it'll actually be better that way. Like
Uh,
that's my writing advice for Brandon Sanderson right there. But no, I agree basically. Like I thought he had some really funny bits, and also just like some really lovely like wisdom, where Hoyd would just sort of like turn to the camera and say something really profound about like relationships,
yeah.
and I'd just
Yeah.
be like, that's really wise.
Hmm.
I love that, and then we just like move on with the story. Like that happens several times.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. The story of this book, as John was saying at the beginning of the episode, is that this is a book he just wrote for his wife. Like this was not like, I guess when you're an author as prolific as Brandon Sanderson, you write entire novels for one person. It's like, hey, I
uh,
wrote you a book today. Um, and that's really interesting because, obviously there is Cosmere stuff here, but it does feel like a lot of this is just like, I know you, my wife, will like this and like this, and like there is a lot of, sometimes the trying to be funny stuff in these other books, I think is like, I'm really trying hard to be this certain type of author, whereas here I felt is like, I do and say a lot of really stupid, unfunny stuff in an attempt to make my wife laugh, like all the time. And it works maybe 50% of the time, but I'm
uh,
never going to stop doing that because it's like part of our relationship. And that's what some of this stuff felt to me. So even if I like rolled my eyes and was like, that's not funny, it's like, oh, you're just like putting out all the stops to make your wife chuckle. And like I can imagine him like sitting in the other room as she's reading it and she like laughs and he's like, which one? What was that? Which one worked? I
uh,
think that's a lot of fun.
yeah, yeah.
And this is the other thing that I found really interesting about this book, and I think why it eventually works. I was thinking a lot about, this is a man who is in the middle of this huge, huge, huge series he's created with the Stormlight Archive. Like, I think book 5's coming out this year, right? And it's only like 5 of, 13 planned ones or something ridiculous. And there's a lot of pressure in that, right? And, George R. R. Martin deals with that pressure by never writing again.
Uh-huh.
And Sanderson deals with that pressure by allowing himself the freedom to write something else. And like, this is a book that it feels like it's a release valve of that kind of pressure. Like he's writing as if he knows he has a freedom to experiment and to fuck around a little bit and to just be a little more loose and not so Cosmere of it, like, and the Cosmere stuff's still in there because the man can't help himself, like he just can't. But like it comes off, especially in the beginning, like the first third of the book, like just comes off as like, oh my god, this is a guy just like, I can do whatever I want. I don't have to deal with like the overarching scope of this giant series I'm working on and this giant multi-book, multi-series long plot line. I can just fuck around in this world. And look, there's an ocean now. Yeah, but it's not water. It's spores. Fuck yeah. And what
Yeah.
happens when water touches it? I don't know. It explodes. And then and it just feels so free and fun. And I think the tone wouldn't have worked as well if he was trying to force it. And because, we talked at the very end of last month's episode, about like the absurdity of the fact that he made a jillion dollars on Kickstarter to release these books. And it's like, obviously a publisher would have snapped these up and published them immediately. You didn't need to raise money on Kickstarter to publish them. Completely unnecessary. But he wanted to do it. And there's many reasons he wanted to do it. But I really, after reading it, really think one of the reasons was just like, because then the pressure's off. Like there's no pressure. Like I don't have, like it's been carved out as a separate thing. It's not part of this other thing I'm doing. It's its own thing now. And I've cemented that by, these are the secret projects. These are the Kickstarter projects. And so I don't have this kind of incredible pressure hanging over my head. I can just write something.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I have no idea what his attitude is about these books, but that kind of feels right. I felt while reading it like he was having more fun
Mm-hmm.
than usual. Like I think his other books are like competently crafted novels,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Yeah.
there are times that they feel like someone has sort of structured this in a way that is optimized to be entertainment,
Yeah.
whereas this book just felt like a guy who was kind of inspired and was
Yeah.
channeling his inspiration, and he just had this idea for pirate ship sailing on a sea of spores with the moons raining down the spores,
What a
and it
cool
was
image.
like yeah, like I once again, it's like I have no idea how much like preparation he did or brainstorming or like I don't really know what his process is, and especially not for this book. But like because it's so short, because it's not really related to his other worlds, it just and because of the tone, like because of the prose, because of the nature of the character, it just feels like he had a spark of inspiration. He saw this character, he had this thing he wanted to say with the book, he saw this setting, and he just like went, um, and it maintained that sort of power. I think for most of the book. So yeah, I
Yeah,
agree with you.
I think John puts it in really great that like as much as the man obviously clearly loves writing, like the Stormlight Archive stuff is his job, right? This is his job. This is what's expected of him. This is what he has to do, and this is fun. Um, it sounds insane to me to be a person who spends thousands of hours writing every year for work, and then also says, "Oh, I need a break. What am I gonna do? I guess I could write, but like it's different. It's insane. But that's who he is,
Yeah,
and that's
that's yeah. That's I mean, we talk about Stephen King a lot too. So
mhm.
there's these people where that just brings them so much joy and contentment and happiness that's just what they're going to do even when they have a vacation,
I
which is great.
I do think I need to spend a little bit more time like learning about him as a person,
Hmm.
and like I know so much. And I don't want to digress too much into Stephen King because we will be here all night. But I know so much about like Stephen King and what he thinks about the process, and I've listened to a little bit of the Brandon Sanderson podcast where he talks about writing in like broadly and that kind of thing. But like King spends so much time describing writing as a joy, yes, but also like we talked with Dumaki, a need, like that like it's not even that like I love doing this, which he does, but it's like I can't not do this. Like
Hmm.
I can't. I would go insane. I would go crazy. I would not be able to live my life. It would destroy me to stop this. And I don't know. I don't know if Sanderson approaches writing like that. I
Hmm.
kind of don't think so. But again, I have not listened to him talk about that specifically. Um, I think speaking of King, the book I kept thinking about when reading this was Eyes of the Dragon,
Hmm.
which is Stephen King doing a similar thing here, where he is specifically trying to go for a certain tone, a certain kind of thing that's very different from the way he normally writes books. It is fantasy, which was more of a departure for King than it is for Sanderson because King doesn't write in fantasy very often. But it was the Eyes of the Dragon was very specifically trying to be like a high fantasy medieval tale. And this is not that, but it's similar enough in that like you could tell he said I'm going to write this very specific thing that is very different from what I did.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, like maybe he read a pirate ship book or he went on a kick of watching pirate movies or something, and or maybe it was that I don't know, this is total conjecture, but like maybe his wife really likes pirate books or something, and he's like,
yeah,
I
could
want
be.
I want to try the pirate thing.
Hmm.
I just want to do that. I just want to do my take on a pirate story. Which just by the way, wasn't clear to me until we were pretty far into the book that this was going to be a pirate story.
Yeah.
like like I thought maybe we were gonna kind of bounce around this setting and go to different islands and have different adventures, more of an Odyssey type story, but it just turned out to be a pirate, a Treasure Island, pirate story, which is great. I mean,
Yeah.
I was happy with it in the end.
I
Um,
Yeah, I ended up liking it in the end. I did feel, and I think I talked to you about this yesterday, and I think I've almost changed my mind since then. But I did feel like that the middle book part where I started like kind of getting down on the book a little bit was when I started to realize, oh, we're just gonna be on the pirate ship doing the pirate ship thing for the whole book. And yeah, in my head, I had this like you know going to many different places, exploring many different things, like many different characters continually coming in and out of the novel. And that's not where the book went. And there was an initial feeling of disappointment when I realized that. It ended up working because I ended up liking these characters so much, especially Fort. I loved Fort. He's great. But yeah, there was an initial level of like, oh, okay. I guess we're just gonna be on the pirate ship the whole time. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I felt the same. Like, well, yeah, I mean, this is kind of my issue. My one like kind of cohesive issue with the book is like the middle section just is a little slow, which is weird because the book is so short. Which is why I think it would be improved if it was like that bit where like she's studying the spores and we're on the pirate ship and we don't particularly feel like we're moving the plot forward, and we're kind of, it's more like we're adding complexity instead of moving things forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of like, I don't think I want this to be any more complex. I think I just want it to be this simple thing, and I like that, and I want it, and then it will resolve and it will be satisfying. But in retrospect, it's hard to really come down so hard because I'm like, all the the characters we added, I am pretty happy with all of them. Like I like all of them. I guess it's like, none of them like blew me away either. Like the main story was my favorite part, right?
Yeah.
I did like Fort. I liked despite the fact that the doctor is more comic relief than anything. I thought he was fun.
Well,
I
they're
like
all archetypes, right? Like they all operate like they're broad in a way that works perfectly for like it works perfectly with the type of book this is. Like Anne is the cannoneer who can't hit the broadside of a barn.
Yeah.
And then it's because she needs glasses. They operate very broadly, but it functions because of just the type of book it is.
Uh-huh. Does anybody else think that Brandon Sanderson like learned about fluidization of sand and was like, really? That's so cool.
Yes, exactly. I gotta work this into something.
Yeah. Got to make a whole book where the oceans are fluidized solid particles. I mean, I was fine with that.
It was great. It was cool. Like it was really cool. Like this is it's a very it's a very visual book, right? I think the one thing we haven't talked about is I think the big edition that came out with the Kickstarter was like an illustrated edition. It had a bunch of beautiful pictures. This version I have no pictures, but I did look at the ones that were posted online. Very, very beautiful art, like very, very, very visual book. Like you can imagine it. I think the beauty of these incredibly low hanging moons over these seas of different colors, like this is an entirely red sea, the midnight sea. Like it's very cool. It's very visually striking, and I really like it. It's fun. It's just like the sailing, like the parts of the book I really liked were like the early pirate ship battles, like where you see how these ships fight with each other, and then you see the things that exist in a world where you sail on a spore sea, like how you would deal with a hole being blown into the side of your ship, and how like you make these cannonballs that intentionally burst before they hit because they really just want to wrap you in like all that stuff's really cool, and I liked it. It's a weird thing where I liked it more the less I knew about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. It's fun. It's fun to just get kind of a flurry of creative ideas thrown at you.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, that's fun. And then you move on. But I agree. I feel like it's less fun when it's like, now we're going to min-max it. And I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah. But again, like this is Sanderson, right? And like as John already said, they loved it, and because this is what people expect out of Sanderson, and this is what he obviously enjoys doing. Like he likes munchkinning these systems that he comes up with. Like it's probably one of the great joys of his life to invent a magic system and then spend hours and hours and hours figuring out all the intricacies of it, and like saying, okay, so what would this character do in that system, based on who they are? How would they find a way to as you said,
Mm-hmm.
like min-max it?
Or like, some of the stuff I genuinely do like about all of his books is like not just like what does our protagonist figure out, but like what are the sort of like social and technological changes that have happened in this world.
Yeah.
Due to the existence of this thing. Like you have shard blades, and so what are the consequences of shard blades to combat? Or you have there's a thing called a mistborn. Like, okay, well, what are the safeguards against that, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I actually always liked that stuff as like that kind of world building is fun to me because you're thinking like, yeah, like what would people do differently if the world were different? Like that is sort of
Hmm.
the fundamental question of world building to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I agree. I agree, and I think that it's weird because it's almost as if like I'm complaining about something while saying I like it at the same time. I just think these are two distinct things in my head at least. There's the stuff that like is clearly illustrating like how the world is changed by the existence of these systems, and then the let's sit down at a table and really tinker with the system. The former I really like. The latter I just don't care enough about that stuff, and I think
mhm,
it ends up making it seem less cool to me when we're like very explicitly tinkering with the bounds of this magic system.
mhm. Yeah,
Um,
I think
but
this
yeah, I
book.
mean, when the cannonball blows the hole in the ship and that guy comes down and like seals it with red crystal,
Mhm,
like that's a great moment because you're just like, oh, really?
mhm.
I guess I didn't know that happened. And then like the cool thing is Tress has like basically the exact same reaction that you the reader are having, and that really like I like immediately like sat up in my chair and was like, oh,
Yeah.
we're doing something here, we're
And
cooking.
another moment I really liked kind of along these lines is when, Tress is on the one ship and then it gets, hit, and then the seed stops. I forget what they call it.
Hmm.
They're stuck. And then you're like, "Oh, what a fun idea for like a it's just an intrinsically fun idea to introduce into a pirate ship setting, the idea that every once in a while the ocean just becomes ground and the ships are stuck and you can walk on it as long as you're careful. Um, but it's dangerous.
Uh huh.
And so like I thought that was one of my favorite like set pieces that I could just see in my mind's eye was she gets off the ship and she's literally walking across this extremely dangerous material, while the people on the ship are like shooting at her and the other
Hmm.
guys who are trying to cross. And um, I was like, that's a really good moment. I like this.
Yeah. And your head the whole time you're thinking like there's so much fucking water inside of a human body like there's no way you're gonna make it through this.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, really great moment.
yeah.
So many things to like in this book. We haven't talked about. I mean, I guess we talked broadly about like about Fort and Saleh and Anne and Crow. Did you have anything specific about them that you wanted to dive into? I think like that's the weird thing about this book, and I know we've been talking for 45 minutes, which tends to say that we have a lot to talk about. But I also felt like coming into this conversation, I was just like, I really liked this, but I don't know if I have like too much to say about it. I
Hmm.
really liked it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that it's just good execution, right? And you can always admire and you can always find details to talk about, but I don't know what like specific thing to say because it's like, yeah, like all of those characters that you just named, they have a good like central flaw that is then addressed by their contact with this wonderful person who is Tress, and you get a catharsis with them, like each of them individually, and it makes you happy, it makes you smile. Even the horrible ship's captain, who's like genuinely a horrible person, you kind of get a little catharsis around that. Tress becoming the captain is one of those moments where I was like, I, I, I buy this,
Mhm.
despite the fact that I mean, I think that again, that's one of those things that where it helps that it's kind of a whimsical Princess Bride-esque story, but like
Yeah.
you're when you get to that point, it's just a delightful and satisfying moment. I think that's just the way I think that's the way Sanderson thinks of stories, and I think that's the way he organizes his stories. Is like, what are some really fun moments that will make the reader like feel some specific strong emotion, usually satisfaction or happiness or something like that. Sometimes something much more complex. I think there are some really complex moments in Stormlight. And then he's like, all right, what do I have to do to get there? And I'm pretty much always happy with the way he does that. Like I think that is the thing where I think he's really a master, and I would really want to learn from him. And I think he does that really well in this book too.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, we could go into the detail on each character, but I think on a meta level, that's what excites me about his approach to this book. Is it's just a good example of that sort of thing done in a more like concise package.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like what John's saying here in the chat as well. The political system of the world is clearly kind of built out and exists, but we don't really focus on it very much because it's not really the focus of the novel. It's there. It's not like this would be the thing where like if we stop to explain the political system in the detail that we stop to explain the magical system, I would have just been like, fucking kill me. Because nobody stops and explains the political system of Gilder, right? Like
Yeah,
there's
right.
there's a king, um, his son, and
Yeah,
that's all you need to know.
right.
That's it.
No, I mean it's so much better that there's just like Charlie's father is a duke, and you're
Hmm.
like, well, what is the system? It doesn't matter. He's the.
Yeah.
I mean, we did. I felt like it was just the right amount of painting the picture of this terrible island that she lived on.
Yeah.
Um,
Where everything has salt in it. The
yeah,
tea is
it
salty.
yes, that was almost like a sort of like Dickensian or maybe like Roald Dahl kind of tinged part of the book where it's like that she's this poor girl. I, I guess I'm thinking about like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where it's like she's just this poor, pure-hearted girl who is so selfless and loving toward everyone, but she doesn't even realize how unique and special she is.
Hmm.
And she lives in this comical shithole of an island that she can never leave. Like that was that like there's that's what's delightful about it is it's this like kind of evil world actually where it's like yeah you can literally never leave the island, but her like friends love her so much that they connive to get her smuggled out of the island. Um,
And she doesn't even really want to leave. I think
mhm.
it's not as if we're doing the classic rejecting of the call to adventure thing here. She's just like, I am entirely normal. I am fine being entirely normal. I am entirely content. I just love this boy. I'm forced to adventure, not because I'm like rejecting the call, but merely because I love him.
Yeah,
Um,
right. That's one thing I guess I want to pick at is like the her flaw. I just remembered what her flaw is because I was thinking and I was like, I know she has a flaw, but I can't call it to mind. And it's that she's too nice, actually.
yeah,
Like that's which is genius. Where like the point of the character is she has a great heart. It's like
she's
well
yeah.
she
Go ahead.
needs to figure out how to have a great heart while not being a doormat.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
She's so overly concerned with everyone else that she like never asks for help. She can never allow people to aid her and like and of course the way Sanderson handles this at the end I think is really perfect when the ship suddenly appears. It's like, my friends, and it's like, and then she realized like, oh, they were just wanting to do the same thing that I was wanting to do, which is rescue the person that they love. And she just like is so constantly putting everyone before her
hmm
that and I love the idea that that is in general like a good quality, right? Selflessness, right?
hmm
Kindness. These are good qualities, but brought to an extreme, they become detrimental to you because
yeah.
yeah, you just uh what do you have?
Right.
And
Yeah. And so that's her arc is learning to be more assertive, to ask for things that she wants.
yeah,
Right. And it's very satisfying to watch that. And I don't know. I just felt like that was a kind of arc that I don't know that I've ever seen before where it's like it's not like she's too perfect because that is a flaw. It is a flaw to be a doormat.
yeah,
But I don't know. It was a delightful thing to watch. And I mean, we even toward the beginning, I just loved the moment where her own father I think kind of recognizes this about her. Like normally you would have in a story vaguely like this you might have like the parents are an obstacle like the kid the protagonist has to figure out how to escape, and in this one it's like as soon as she explains the situation her father is just like I have to go for a walk, and then he just like arranges everything for her
yeah.
to be smuggled off the island because she's not at a point where she can do it yet, right? She can't actually ask people for help, but so he does it for her.
And I'm only now like putting together because I thought that scene was very distinct. Like her father basically just like walks into the bar and like doesn't even necessarily like outright say, "Hey, you, I need help." He just makes it very clear that he needs help from the people,
Hmm.
and like all the people that love him like flock to him, and there's like, "Okay, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna help him?" And it's just like suddenly like everyone on the island is there, and like it's it's really great because that's essentially what happens with Tress at the end of the book. It's like this really interesting message of like if you treat the people around you with kindness, with empathy, no matter what, like you will earn a level of respect to those people that just cannot be countered by anything, even the most powerful sorceress in the world. Um, but it still takes you asking for their help. Like you still have to, ask for it. Like you can't just, there's like a lot of ideas out there. I was like, oh, if it's like if you be kind to people, people will be kind back to you. Yeah, usually. But if you need them, if you need people, if you need to call on people, you have to actually call on them.
Hmm.
And that is, I think, one of the things she learns here is, and I love the scene with I think it's Sally. I can't remember, when she takes her aside and is basically like, you're the captain. We'll do whatever you say. Um, but I really don't want you to give this order. And she just doesn't get it, right. I think
Hmm.
what Wit says in the narration is the part she heard of that advice was just, these people care about you and you should care about them. And it's like, no, you're taking the wrong, she's telling you right now, let us help you. um but she doesn't want to just, like, yeah, it's this
Hmm.
really interesting, fascinating dynamic between those two characters.
Yeah, I agree. I remember that moment distinctly and being like, this is one of the benefits of having a narrator. Like that
Mm-hmm.
was actually one of the clearest moments where I was like, huh, narrators are useful conceit because the ability to have Wit point this out
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
about Tress's character was very like, huh, that's it's actually kind of an interesting way to talk about this kind of character and this kind of dynamic.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I don't know. Gosh, really great book. Like I am glad we took our Sanderson break. I am. But I'm also very glad I read this book, and I still don't know if like I'm a Sanderson convert that's gonna be like, I need to read everything this guy's ever read or ever written. I do, like, I do want to read the Stormlight Archive books. Like, I've enjoyed my time with the first two books. I still remain at this place where I'm just like, I don't know how often I want to do this on book club, because I feel like sometimes, like, y'all people in the audience right now are like, oh my god, they're doing Sanderson again. I love this guy. I'm so excited. And I come sit up here on my platform and yuck your yums a little bit, and I don't feel good about that. It doesn't feel good. And I also feel like the things I like about these books are just like, oh, that was so fun. That's so fun and exciting.
uh
And the things I don't like about these books are so clear to me in a way that this is the way the conversations go. Like, it's just
uh
like, on the good side, oh, I loved this part. It was so great. This character was so fun. But on the bad part is like, oh, but I really didn't like this specific thing, and I'm going to talk about that for 10 minutes. And I do feel sometimes, speaking of the freedom and the pressure that Sanderson feels, I do feel when I'm reading one of these books for book club, I just have the pressure in the back of my mind of like, I'm gonna have to talk about this on the book club, and if I say bad things, I know I'm gonna upset people because people are very passionate about this guy, and I feel that like like a monkey on my back.
uh Yeah, I think I feel a lot of that too. That's one of the things. Like, it's not like I categorically don't want to read Sanderson. It's that I don't want to, like you just said, yuck everybody's yum, and that's just like not a fun thought.
Mm-hmm.
There's another thing with me, by the way, that I don't think I've mentioned on any of these podcasts. Maybe I might have. I don't remember. But just like, I really don't particularly care for the audiobook reader. Oh,
Hmm. Is
who
it
does?
this? Is it the same one?
It's the same one. It's the same guy who does all of the Sanderson books. He also does the Wheel of Time books, interestingly. Um, and he has the like. It's not that he's like a bad audiobook reader. It's that I feel like his like sort of innate persona kind of clashes with what Sanderson is usually trying to do, where like he has the audiobook reader seems to have this like ironic detached tone,
Hmm.
which really doesn't play, especially when like you got a character like Wit who's trying to be clever and funny and sarcastic. It makes it come out wrong, and I have to almost like try to see past the inflection the audiobook reader is putting on it to like get what Sanderson was going for. And it's a huge pain actually.
Interesting.
And I am basically just limited due to everything about my life to only doing audiobooks. But this is one case where I'm like, I really wish there were, at least I would like to do the experiment of like listening to a a well-regarded Sanderson book that has a different audiobook reader just to see like how that feels.
Hmm.
Because I honestly feel like this is one of the things that stands between me and enjoying the books. I mean, there are definitely things I just think that I legitimately have an issue with that I've explained, but
Hmm.
just on an experiential level, like the audiobook reader is usually not doing me any favors. I don't know if anybody else feels the same. Anybody who has experience with this audiobook reader. Again, I don't want to say like, oh, he's a horrible audiobook reader. It's just like I don't think his vibe matches what these books are doing. And it was almost particularly bad with this one because this book is like this fun whimsical book, and he has, like I said, this like he almost has like a sneering tone as like his
Huh.
default voice, which
Interesting.
doesn't work well with like earnestness. um, anyway, that's just a thing I don't think I'd ever mentioned before, so I wanted to get it off my chest here in this
Yeah,
context.
that's interesting. I mean, we have talked many times through all the various shows that we've done of how much the audiobook experience is no less real, but also very different from the experience of reading words on a page.
Hmm.
Um, because yeah, I mean, like I don't know if we said that on this podcast in particular, but like the idea that when you're reading a book, it is a direct connection between you and the author, but you're the kind of director, right? Because you're deciding in your mind what inflection and what tone, and the author is like explaining it to you, but essentially it's your brain still interpreting and replaying it in your head. When you're listening to an audiobook, there's a third party there. There's an actor performing it. There's the actor's has a director that's probably coaching him on what he thinks it should be, and those are just more people that are between you and the author. And so yeah, that does introduce a way that can elevate the audiobook. I think we've talked many times about the Dark Tower audiobooks and how good they are. And I mention that only because I'm listening to them right now. I think I've dabbled a little bit before, but so yeah, I mean, I think it can elevate and make something possibly better. But yeah, it can also make something very, very much worse.
Yeah, I guess I don't know if I have a point here. I guess I just wish it were not so. But anyway, even despite the fact that I feel like he was a particularly bad choice for this book, I think the book kind of just shone through, despite that. In this case, anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, it looks like Zach here mentions that their father has a similar or the same complaint you do, and as I'd heard from other people have similar complaints. Bent Westford said a little heavy on the snark, which may be kind of what you're talking about.
yeah, and it's like this is like the sixth or seventh book that I've read with this reader, and so the little things that begin to annoy you, really like you really notice them after that much,
Especially when those couple thousand page books that are like literally 50 something hours of
Yeah,
audiobook. Yeah, I
yeah,
can imagine.
right.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think we're saying. I will say, like, where I am right now is I enjoyed this book enough where I have the Oathbringer book. I bought it years ago. I think I bought we read Way of Kings, and I enjoyed that despite the little quibbles we had. And I bought the next two right after that, and then I think it was forever before we covered the second one, which I can't even remember the name of right now. But I have the third one, and I would like to read it. I like my reading time is pretty limited right now, outside of everything we're doing for book club and for Kingslingers. But I don't want to just jump back into Sanderson. But I guess where I'm at is like, to me, this was kind of doing this book was kind of a test for us in my mind of
Hmm.
like, okay, we basically put this guy in timeout because which was the last one we did? I think it was like Warbreaker or Bringer or I forget.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know.
War Sanderson Warbreaker, which is a novel that like a lot of people really really liked, and I think is like my least favorite of everything I've read by him. Um, and that really just kind of the Emperor's Soul was the last we did. I don't even remember that one.
I think I have actually totally fused the Emperor's Soul and Warbreaker in my
I
mind.
think I have too. Which
Which
one
one,
was this one?
which one of these is the one with the colors?
That's Warbreaker, right? The colors is Warbreaker. Are you sure? I'm looking at the Emperor's Soul right now, and I have literally no memory of this.
Um, uh, the Emperor's Soul. No, I do remember
Oh, this is the
this
one
one.
where yeah, she's
Yes,
she's
yes.
got 100 days to forge the soul. Yeah.
No, no, it
Okay.
was yeah, it was like yeah. Neither of us particularly liked Warbreaker. I think that I liked what I liked what Emperor's Soul was going for. I don't
Emperor's
remember.
Soul was very short. It was
Yeah,
like less than 200 pages.
yeah,
So
yeah. I
yeah,
remember
that's
liking the idea of it, like that.
yeah. I agree.
Um, it was very imaginative. That's another thing. I mean, I guess we kind of said that in this conversation, but like a lot of his just like concepts are quite creative and original. Like the premise of this book that we just read, the premise of Emperor's Soul. Um, yeah,
I just sometimes I feel the critics that are required to read these books sometimes. Not that I'm saying anything bad about Emperor's Soul, but like Tor.com similarly described the work as enjoyable.
uh-huh.
Just damning with faint praise. Um, yeah, I God, I completely forgot about this book. It's coming back to me now. But yeah, I really didn't like Warbreaker at all, and that really kind of turned me sour into the point where I was just like, why do we keep doing this to ourselves? But I'm feeling pro Sanderson right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I do like I am. There is a part of me that's like, so the interesting thing about this, and I think this is a good conversation to have anytime we talk about Sanderson, but like I don't give a shit about the greater Cosmere stuff at all. I don't understand it. I don't know what's going on. The references, 99% of them go completely over my head. I do not care. I am very curious about what's going to happen to the characters that I really like in Stormlight Archive.
Right.
Uh, and that is like I see every time I walk by my living room, my like Oathbringer is like on the edge of my bookshelf, and so it's just like right there, and I see it, and I was like, I want to figure out what happens to those guys. That second book ended on a little bit of a cliffhanger there, where
Yeah.
you're like, um,
Uh-huh.
I want to find out what happens to those guys, but I just don't care about any of the larger world stuff in these books, and that's why like I Warbreaker, it's like that's the sword. Don't you remember the sword? I'm like, oh yeah, I guess.
Yeah, no, I feel the same. It doesn't. It's interesting. I don't know why exactly, because I think this is actually kind of an interesting tangent because I can think very easily of, three authors who have done this sort of big, big world, big world building type thing, where
Mm-hmm.
like Stephen King being an obvious second here on this list, where there's this dark tower cosmology, but it like feels so totally different than the way Sanderson's does. Um,
I think it's because not only do I not really give a shit about the larger cosmology of the Dark Tower stuff, but I don't think King does either. I mean, I
mhm.
think he does like broadly, but in just like the statement of like everything's connected, and that's it. That's like as far as what is the Dark Tower? It's the center of everything. It's also a metaphor for addiction, and also, uh, whatever. I don't care. And like I feel like King often feels that way to me because he's changed his mind about it so many times. Um,
Yeah, right.
What was
But
the
some
third? What was the third one you were
well,
thinking of?
so the third one was a much less of a good fit, though very familiar to most of our audience, which was Wildbow, because Wildbow doesn't really do shared universe in the sense that it's like, oh, all these stories are actually connected. But I think what I actually meant wasn't quite the same thing, but it was like that was a story where I was super invested in like the world building and the backstory and like really got into like there's like a as you're first reading the book, you're like, this one character can like gets like this certain kind of insight into this element of the story, and like what does that mean? And you're like I was like remarkably uniquely into the world building of that, where I think that the issue, actually, to put it more broadly, is I don't normally care about all this like expanded universe stuff because I don't normally care about world building all that much.
Mm-hmm.
Like world
Mm-hmm.
building to me is the the set decor behind the actors, and I'm so much more interested in the performances and the actors. And yes, of course, the stage needs to be there, the decor needs to be there, the set dressing
Yeah.
needs to be there. But like and I can appreciate it, and I know that it's necessary, but it doesn't usually absorb me ever. But Wild Though I think was like a big exception to that, where I was like really into the world building there. Um, and I don't know why. Like I don't know what the difference is there. I don't know.
Hmm.
Like I don't know why Sanderson's world building. It's not that it doesn't work on me. It's just like I don't, like you said, I'm not interested in it. I'm just like, oh, okay, all right. Oh, it's the sword. Okay.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I mean, here's what I'll say about that. I agree, and I agree with John. What John is saying in chat as well is that you don't have to care about the Cosmere stuff. Like,
mhm.
there has never been a moment in any one of these books where I just flat out was not along with what was happening to the characters because of some Cosmere shit and some connections I was not recognizing that I was supposed to. I will say there are times when the Cosmere stuff starts happening. I feel like the book, I feel like I'm supposed to care. Is I guess the way I'll put it. It's like I
Yeah.
don't have to, but I feel like I'm supposed to, and that's a really weird, discongruous feeling to have. Right? It's like I don't care about the stuff, but I think the book really wants me to care about it, even though it's not making me care about it. And that I don't know, that is kind of how I feel about it. And
Mhm.
I don't even know where to go with that, other than that's the way it makes me feel sometimes.
Yeah, I guess to me it all boils down to just like, what is the narrative purpose of this? Like for a guy who I see as being a master of knowing, like, all right, what is the moment I'm trying to craft? What is the emotional climax and catharsis
Mm.
I'm trying to craft, and how do I get there? I'm like, well, what is this in service of? Like the fact that the sword is here. Like I don't feel any emotions about this. I can imagine feeling emotions about it. I just don't, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
um like that's the thing. I'm more like introspecting here than I am like criticizing Sanderson's approach to this, because
Absolutely, same. Yeah.
but like even like the Wheel of Time, I think once again that is just one story, so it's not like it's an expanded universe. But it's like I think because of where I was in my life when I read those books, I probably was like super into the like, oh, that's a one of those things. He's got the one kind of sword from the one place. And maybe I did feel something back then, and maybe I'm just like literally too old to care anymore. I don't know. I don't know.
Speaking of this, Lemony says, "Did we catch that the what is his name? I lost this in the chat. I saw it earlier, and now I can't find it.
She's
There
playing
was
the Magic the Gathering.
no. Yeah, I mean that no, but
I didn't see. Yeah, that's great.
just that the one weird guy in the ship is a race seen in Mistborn.
Oh, okay.
The answer to that is no. That Ulam was a Khandra from Mistborn. No, I did not catch that at all. I'm struggling to remember what a Khandra is, to be honest with you.
Chandra from
I bet once I look it
it's
up,
been a long time. Oh wow.
it has been a long time. But yeah,
But
no, did not catch that at all.
that word certainly sounds familiar.
It does.
I'm desperately trying to remember. Yeah, wasn't there a main character who was a Chandra?
Uh-huh.
And like,
They're the ones that eat people and impersonate them. Okay, that sounds familiar to me now.
Okay.
The shapeshifters. Yeah. Yeah, the one, remember the person was a dog?
Nope.
Really? I remember the dog.
Having a real hard time. I'm really worried about my brain right now. I believe you. I just having a real hard time remembering a person who's a dog.
We read those books. We did. It has been like, when did we read Mistborn?
I don't
It was
know.
a long time ago.
Was he like a villain in that book? I don't.
He was initially a villain, um, but
Yeah.
so we read Hero of Ages, which is the third book in 2019.
Okay. So
So Mistborn, it looks like, was April of 20. No, I don't know, because we updated the website, and so everything has the same publishing date. So I don't know.
oh, I think I okay. Now that I'm reading the Sanderpedia, um, which is called Coppermind, by the way.
Of course it is. It's
Um,
actually great. I do remember that.
I do remember what
You store knowledge in those things,
yeah, I do
like that
remember
one guy did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, John. There is it plays really fast and loose with the fact that there's all this modern technology in this place that it feels out of place, especially the spaceship. Yeah, I did not. Did you get that the board was just a tablet? I didn't. I was like, oh, cool, a magical. In my head, it was a chalkboard for some reason, even though it doesn't say it's a chalkboard. It was just a magical chalkboard.
I mean I got that it was a piece of technology and not magic, but I didn't necessarily think like it's an iPad. I mean honestly I thought of it as being like a super high tech tablet, right? Not like something even beyond our level. Like they
Yeah.
have access to worlds that are even more high tech. Yes, I did enjoy the risque humor in this book, because normally that's not in Sanderson books,
Yeah,
so made it more
really
fun.
pushing that novel, pushing it. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe this is just a symptom of just writing for his wife and not for everyone else. It's like, hey, my church isn't going to read this, so let's
Yeah.
talk about
Yeah,
dicks.
let's talk about a Ionic symbol for once.
Warbreaker magic.
Oh
So,
no.
so tired. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, good book though. Good book. Anything else anyone wanted to say about Tress and her beautiful Emerald Sea? We didn't talk about the cups at all, which is weird because like the cups are like the defining thing at the beginning of the book, and then how do you feel about the
Yeah.
cups?
I mean, I think the cups are a symbol of her, sublimated desire to explore and expand and
Yeah,
which she has totally ignored because it's just not a possibility for her and she doesn't want to be a bother.
yeah,
And then she kind of no longer she kind of outgrows the cups because it's like the cups were just something that she had because she actually wanted to have these experiences.
yeah, yeah. I agree. Agree with that. It was good. Liked it. Liked the cups.
Yep,
It's a cool little butterfly cup.
I like the cups too. It's
I
a
don't really
fun
believe
type.
they could have glued it all back together, but whatever. Now I'm just being an asshole. All right. Let's we're going to lock down the vote for next month's book. So if you haven't voted yet, if you came late to the episode, here is once again the link to the poll. So please head there. We're gonna lock this down in just a few seconds, and then we will announce what we're gonna be covering for May. All right, I'm gonna refresh it a couple times. Okay, I think unless something ridiculous happens, we're pretty well, pretty well set.
All
Yep.
right.
Okay, the votes that are coming in right now are just furthering the lead. So, next month we are going to be reading James Clavell's Shogun. Very exciting. We just did an episode on the television show on the Doofcast today. And we kind of intentionally didn't get too into the details of the book. I kind of forced Matt to not talk about the book too much because it was currently winning in the book club poll, and I knew we were going to be reading it. So if you've watched the show and are really, really curious about the book, which is basically what happened with me and why I saw this in our nominations and said, this is perfect, let's do it. That's what we're going to be doing. So next month we will be reading Shogun, and we'll be here on what day? What is the last Friday in May? It's the 31st. So we actually have 5 weeks to read this one. I think it's a little bit of a longer book, right, Matt? So that's good. A little bit of time.
Cool.
Page length.
I want to make sure I'm not traveling that week.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of this is a big book.
Yes, it is.
It's 1,000 pages. It's a Sanderson.
Does this need to be a 2-monther, you think?
We've got 5 weeks. I think we can do it. I didn't realize this was this big of a fucking book. Jesus.
Yeah, I remember lugging it around my high school.
Man, you were so cool.
I was the coolest kid in school, man.
Is Shogun part of a giant expanded universe? Yeah. You guys, there's this planet and like 1 billion people live on it. And like there's like so many different stories. Like it's crazy.
More than 1 billion.
Yeah, more than 1 billion.
You know, to moderately seriously answer that question, only in the most slight possible sense that many of James Clavell's books concern the same family over a period of like 200 years, but Shogun is not among those. Shogun is just off by itself. So.
Yeah, I think the way to demonstrate this the most is that they made a television show about it that was 10 episodes long and extraordinarily successful, and they have not immediately said we're going to do more seasons. So that should tell you that it's pretty contained. So yeah, I think are you traveling on that week? We should have talked about this before we were live on
yeah, no, the travel was in the indefinite future, which will never happen until now. We have to have this actual conversation and pin down when the travel is. I am traveling I'm getting back the 31st. Did you say the 31st?
Yeah, 31st.
That might be a little tight, so we might have to push a week, but maybe we'll have to make up our mind about that later.
Okay. Yeah, we will announce it next week when we actually post the post for the book. But yeah, it's gonna be Shogun. I think maybe expanding it out another week because it's so long a book isn't the worst thing in the world. So we'll figure that out. But we'll let y'all know. But that's going to do it for us this month. Thank you everyone for hanging out. It was a lot of fun. Like I said, I get stressed about these conversations whenever we talk about Sanderson because I just know I'm going to come in with some negative things to say, and I don't like being that person. I know people really like this guy, and I like him too. Just don't love him.
I like him, and I like this book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, if you like what we do here at Doof Media and you want to see more of it, then please head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia and consider donating to support our organization. At any available level, you'll get access to the ability to vote for the books that we talk about on this here book club, as well as a bunch of other exclusive features. So go check that out.
Yeah, that's right. If you have any questions or comments or just want to reach out and say hello, you can always find us on Twitter at doofmedia, on Instagram at doofmedia. You can email us, doofmedia@gmail.com. And of course, you can head over to Patreon. We've barely talked about this, but of course, Patreon is our subscription service where folks donate and help us out financially. But you can also follow us on Patreon for free. They have like a free follow function now. There will be some posts that you won't be able to see and things like that, but it's just a good place if you want to catch up on we whenever these book clubs go live, we post it there to everyone. So yeah, that's patreon.com/doofmedia.
Yep.
All right. I think we're done. So we'll see everyone next month.
Bye-bye.
To answer your question, John Olith, no, I've not read Claw yet. I just don't have a lot of free reading time right now, especially like computer screen reading.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, I almost never do reading with my eyes anymore. So
normally when I'm like reading, it's when I'm on the toilet or in a place where there's not 100 other things going on, and so I can actually focus on a book. So it's very difficult for me with all the other stuff we have going on to like sit down and read from a web browser.
Yeah.
I really did mean to read it though, and like I fell behind so quickly, and it was like a similar thing that happened with Pale, which I know is much shorter, but I was just like, oh, I'm behind now. Now there's no point because I'm never gonna catch up. But
Yeah, I just need there to be an audiobook. That's all.
I'm sure there will be.
Yeah, me too.
How long are the chapters? Because I'm looking at this chapter and it looks pretty fucking long.
Yeah.
Oh, don't say that, Edward. That makes me nervous. You're right, though. If book club is on the 7th, that's the Friday before Bangor.
Yeah. Well, that's
That makes sense, though, and then maybe we just don't have one in June because June is going to be insane.
maybe, yeah, or
maybe we just say it's a 2-monther because it's so long, and we just don't meet till
I
the end
think
of June.
that might be the wise play, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I have a week-long trip at the end of May.
Yeah, and then I'm taking a week off after Bangor. I'm going to be up in Maine till the 21st. So
Yeah, I think that's wise. I don't see any downside. I mean, it's 1,000 books. Yeah, 1,000 books, 1,000 pages.
It's actually 1,100. It's longer than it.
Yeah, I was definitely the coolest kid in school, carrying that around, and then subsequently carrying around Whirlwind and Taipan and Gaijin.
I walked around middle school with Starship Troopers in my lunchbox. One time it fell out of my lunchbox, and all the cool 7th graders decided it'd be fun to kick the book around, and they completely destroyed it. That was very sad.
That's great. I have a similar story where I was reading The Hunt for the Red October, and it was in my locker, and somebody broke into my locker and just stole The Hunt for the Red October.
I guess they were hunting for the Red October.
Yes, Scott. It's very amusing. My deep childhood trauma. I'm glad you think it's funny. No, it's
Come on, it was right there.
No, it was. I chose to do the play where I made you feel bad for it though. So,
okay. Okay.
Yeah. No, you're right, B. Both of our trigger events were related to having a book taken from us. Isn't that extremely appropriate, actually?
Honestly, what it was, like, I felt bad because it was my dad's book and it got destroyed, and like I felt really bad. And my dad, like, I remember like years later was like, "Hey, where'd my book go?" And I was like, I lost it.
Yeah, it's gone. I think Hunt for the Red October was definitely one of my parents' books because there was no way I would have my own copy of Hunt for the Red October. So
okay,
so
you keep putting a "the" in there, and it's starting to bother me.
The Hunt for the Red October.
It's just Red October. The Hunt for Red October. I am 99.9% sure.
You're right, but I don't like that. But you see, Scott, I never got to finish reading it, so how would I know that?
There you go. Okay, I think we're gonna go now. Matt cannot be wrong. That's his trigger event, actually, being wrong.
I do like this idea that our trigger event was that kids were mean to us about our reading habit, and we were like, you know what, fuck you. We made it our whole lives.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so y'all, I really want to read that third Sanderson book, but I have to read this 1,100-page Japanese epic, so
Yeah.
I guess I shouldn't overpromise.
Yeah, sorry.
We're also in the middle of a 900-page Kennedy assassination book.
Yeah. We'll make it.
We're gonna do all right. Y'all have a good weekend. Have a good one. Hope you, if you're watching playoff basketball, hope your team wins. Mine won today, and I'm very happy about it. Matt, players got ejected because they were fighting.
Ooh, that's dramatic.
It's so funny because one of the announcers was a woman named Doris. I like her, but she was just like one of the guys like just like walked up to another one and like hit him on the face, and that's why he got ejected. And she was just like, I just don't see why he would do that. The play was over, and I just wanted to be like, Doris, he was pissed off.
Yeah.
That's why he did it. He was mad.
Yeah. He's experiencing the emotion of anger.
Okay. Anyway, y'all have a good weekend. Good night.
Good night.